You want to learn how to build full stack applications in Vue 3 and Nuxt 3? In today's tutorial, we're going to take a look at Nuxt's new server engine called Nitro. By the time we're done here today, you'll have the foundation you need to start building full stack applications with Vue and Nuxt. So what are we waiting for? Let's jump on in. What's up, friends? My name is Dan Vega, and if you're new around here, I create programming tutorials just like this one on a variety of languages, frameworks, and tools. So if that's something that interests you, please go ahead and click that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up, or leave me a comment below. That would really help me out. So I'm continuing on the series here of creating some videos around Nuxt 3. I'll go ahead and leave some links in the description below to some previous videos, but I talked in there about how I want to move my personal site over to Nuxt 3. So what we're doing here is really just learning the different features of Nuxt 3, and I'm walking you through them as I learn them. And today we're talking about Nuxt 3's server engine, Nitro. All right, so before we get into some code, I just want to head over to v3.nuxt.js.org. Take a look at the landing page. You can see a lot of the new features here in Vue 3 or Nuxt 3. The first big one as we get in here too is Nitro Engine. So if you want to go ahead and read through that, you can. I'm going to click on learn more about it. And there's a nice section here with a bunch of information about the server engine. So Nuxt 3 is powered by a new server engine codenamed Nitro. It has many benefits out of the box, cross-platform support for things like Node.js, browsers, service workers, and more. You get serverless support right out of the box. You get API route support, which is really what we're going to look at today. We'll take a look at a few examples of that. Hybrid mode for static and serverless, development server with hot module reloading. So the first one here is the API layer. So you have the ability to create a server layer, an API layer, where you can create routes. And so these routes can have handlers that can directly return objects or arrays for automatic handling JSON responses, which is nice. They can also return promises. There's also a bunch of helper functions that are included. And the way that this works is you're using this H3 out of the box. So if you look at the H3 docs, that will kind of walk you through a lot of the helper functions. So these are a lot of those functions. Again, just gives you the ability to do some things like, hey, I want to use the body, or I want to send a redirect, or I want to create an error without having to, they automatically get attached to the request and the response. So it's pretty cool. So this is the big thing that I want to focus in on today. We'll create a couple of different API routes and why you might want to use those. This is leading up to something I'm going to do in the next tutorial, which is I've created a Nuxt 3 app that talks to the Notion API to get some data and also update some data in one of your Notion pages. So to do this, we need a server somewhere. Now, normally in the past, I might have used something like Java Spring. So I have a Spring Boot app where I have an API layer, and this kind of handles all the API interactions. Now in Nuxt 3, you can kind of just use the server layer here, which is really nice. So we'll take a look at that. It also has direct API calls. So Nitro allows direct calling of routes via the globally available $fetch helper. What this does is it makes a call to the server if it's run on the browser, but will also simply call the relevant function if it's run on the server. So you have kind of one API for calling things, which is really nice. So you just use $fetch, and that API is using something called ohmyfetch. So if you want to read more about how to use that, we have a link here in the documentation to that. So this is, again, you get that automatic parsing of JSON responses. If you need access to the raw response, you can. The request body and the params are automatically handled with the correct content type headers being added, which is nice. Again, just kind of simplifies your code, which is really nice. Then you have things like typed API routes, standalone server, which I'm not going to get into much. This is kind of important when we go ahead and build the project. Everything is put into a .output directory. And what that means when you have to go put this into production somewhere, right? So really great page here on kind of the benefits of Nuxt 3 Nitro. With that, I don't want to ramble too long. Let's go ahead and jump into some code and take a look at some examples. All right, so the first thing that we need to do is create a new Nuxt 3 project. You could do this from scratch, but what I'm actually going to do is copy an existing template that I have. I went over this in a previous video, so I'll leave a description to that below, but it just kind of adds Tailwind to it. I'm going to use Tailwind just in a few of the pages that I create. So instead of spending the time to go through and set that up, I'm just going to clone this repository. So go ahead and copy that, and let's head over to Visual Studio Code. Okay, so here I am in VS Code. I'm going to go ahead and clone that repo. So I'm going to say git clone. There is the URL for the repo. I'm going to move that into a folder called Hello Nitro. And there we go. So let's see, cd into Hello Nitro. And there we go. That is what we need. So let's say code there. All right, so now that we're in our project here, you can see minimalistic starting code, which I really, really love about Nuxt 3, if I haven't said that before. What we're going to do is we don't have an app.view, we just have some pages. I'm going to go ahead, I don't need this, and I have this index, that view, and whatever, we'll leave that for now, we'll come back to it. So that's our index. Now what we want to do to get started with using the Nitro server and creating some APIs is we need to create a new folder, and we're going to create a folder called server and a folder called API. So now under API is where we can start to create our APIs. So the first one I'm going to do is just the generic hello, which is a JavaScript. And so each of these APIs are basically going to export a default function. So we're going to say export default. This could have the request and the response if you need them. We don't need them for this. And all we're going to say is hello Nitro, right? So that's all there is to creating our first API. So now what we want to do is if we go ahead and run this, we're going to say npm run dev. And we probably need to install some things first. So let's go npm install and npm run dev. And there we go, localhost 3000. Let's go ahead and hop over to the browser. So there we are. Our browser is up and running. We have hello Tailwind 3. That's just a page that we had in there from the starting code. But now if we go over to /API/hello, because that was the name of the file that we created, you see that's going to return the string hello Nitro. All right, so that was pretty cool, pretty basic though. Let's go ahead and start moving on. So next thing I want to do is, so we use JavaScript first. We can also use TypeScript, and we get TypeScript support out of the box here. So I'm going to create a new API called now.ts, and we're just going to walk through this here. So again, we're going to export a default function. And again, we get past the request and the response. Because we're in TypeScript, we actually get some information about the types. So we get incoming message, and the response is a server response. And so then what we'll do is we'll have a function here. And let me just see if I can make that a little bit smaller. That works. So we need to go ahead and import these types. So I'm going to go ahead and import incoming message and server response from HTTP. So now that we have our types, what we can do is we can go ahead and return something. So again, we don't have to use the response and manipulate what we're going to return. We can actually just return something right from this function, and the Nitro server behind the scenes is going to do what it needs to do to kind of return the JSON for us, right? So all we're doing is we're going to say we're going to return a new date, and let's go ahead and just say to local date string. Actually, let's do, so local, yeah, time string. Let's do time. So now we have the actual time of what it is. So now if we go in here, again, the convention is whatever you name the file, that is going to be the name of the route. So first we had /API/hello. This should be /API/now. And there's our time. So again, that's pretty cool. So now let's talk about maybe just how we might use this. So if we go into pages, let's go ahead and create a new file. We'll call this now.view. And in now.view, we'll create a template. And maybe we'll create a div with the class of, so this is just going to be some Tailwind specific stuff. We'll say MX Auto. We'll give it some padding on the y-axis of 8. And then in here, I'll do an H1 with a class of font bold, text 3XL. And again, this is going to be hello Nitro. And then underneath here, what I want to do is say current time is, and we'll just say time. And now let's go get this time from our API. So I'm going to do a script setup. I don't want Typescript though. I'm just going to do a script setup. And in here, I'm just going to say, so what we want to do is we want to get a variable called time because that's what we're displaying up here in our template. So I'm going to say const time is equal to. Now here's where we have to figure out how we're going to go get that data. There's a bunch of different ways in nuxt3 to kind of fetch data. But if you remember back in the docs, we talked about this direct API call using fetch, the $fetch, which is using omyFetch. So if you want to dig into the docs here, but again, all we're going to do here now is we're going to say this is an asynchronous operation. So we're going to say await, and we're going to use that $fetch. And now we're going to say, hey, that's just in the API time. And that should give us everything we need. So we're going to get time back. We're going to display it in our template. So now if I go to localhost 3000, again in nuxt3 and everything under pages, it creates a route for this. So it's going to create a route called now. And it did not. So let's go ahead and see if I screwed something up or if we just need to restart. Sometimes I'm playing with nuxt3. I think I just restart all the time. I don't know if something happened. Okay, so no match found for location with path API time. That's right. That is not what we called it. So let's refresh, and there it is. So current time is 9:52:04. So cool. So now we've seen how to create an API route, how to export some data, and how to create a page that kind of uses that. So now what I want to do is take it one step further. So what we're going to do is I want to create a new folder. Let's start with some data. So I'm going to create a new folder in here. We're going to call it data. If we can get there, data. And what I want to do is I've found some posts from, let's see. So we're going to just call this a new file. We'll say post.json. And I'm going to paste this in. This is just some data I found on the internet. There's a bunch of services out there that will kind of create just some random data for you. JSON placeholder is one of those. So I went over to JSON placeholder, went into posts and just copied out all 100 posts. So we're going to use these posts in an application. So now this is kind of simulating, hey, maybe I have an API somewhere else externally that has this data, or I'm grabbing it from a database. I'm just going to use a local JSON file. You could do this in a Vue template, but I'm just kind of giving you an example of how we can pull some data in. So I'm going to save that. So now I have some posts. Now what I'm going to do in the server API is create a new file called posts.typescript. And we're going to come in here and work on this. So the first thing I would do is I'm going to go ahead and import posts from, this should be data, there it is, /posts/JSON. So now I have my posts. I'm going to also import incoming message, server response from HTTP. And again, we're going to export a default. We'll call this, we'll just create a function. And so I'm going to have the request, incoming message, and the response, which is the server response. And in here, let's do a couple things. So you'll see, don't mind some of those, like you see some hints there in light gray. That's actually GitHub Copilot working. So it's trying to suggest what I might want to write, but that's not what I'm going to write there. So, okay, so the first thing we need to do is be able to return all of the posts. So all I want to do is return posts.find. Actually, I'm sorry, return posts. So we're going to return posts, and that should be all we needed to do. So let's check out the API now, and we'll say API posts. And there are all my 100 posts being returned. So now let's talk about how we might use those. So back in pages, I'm just going to take over this template, this index, and we'll use it there. So let me make this a little bit bigger. And I'm going to go ahead and copy in the template that I'm going to use here, just so that we don't have to watch me write out some HTML. So again, I'm going to do a script setup here, and we need an array of posts. So I'm going to say const posts, and what I'm going to do is go ahead and await. Now remember, we're going to use that fetch. So we're going to say fetch /API/posts. And that will give us all of our posts, and our posts are coming back as this is the same as saying posts equals posts. And so in our, so we're destructuring what's being returned, and we're saying, hey, all we want back is posts right now. And what I'm doing is iterating over those posts using a v-for directive. So for posts in posts, for every one of those, I want you to create a nuxt link. So this is a way of using really just a facade on top of the view router component in view router. So all we're saying is, hey, I want to link to /posts with the post ID. And what I want you to display is the post title. So again, the nice thing about the server here is all I'm doing is saying, hey, return this variable post. I didn't have to set a content type. I didn't have to figure out how to create the JSON that I'm going to return. Nuxt Nitro is kind of doing that for me. So if I go back over to localhost 3000, there we go. I see a list of all of my posts. Cool. So now what I want to do is when I click on this, you could see that we are going to /posts and the post ID. And so what I want to do is set up another route for that. So I could do that in a separate file if I wanted to, but it's easier if I just do it here because this is where all of my post data is, right? And the way that we're going to do that is we have to somehow figure out if we are trying to serve up a single post or all the posts. So let's make that happen. So what I'm going to do is actually pull out path name from, this is going to be equal to new URL. So this is from the request. So now we're using the request from something, right? We get that request from the incoming message, there. So I'm going to say request.url, and let's go ahead and give it a default here, request.headers. This takes a URI, so we'll say .host. So now we're going to pull the path name out of that. And now we can use the path name. So we can say, hey, I want you to split the path name. So let's say split, and we're going to split it on the slash. And I want you to give me the first index of that. So the 0 index is going to be everything before the slash. The first index is going to be everything after the slash. So it might look like, let me back this up. So it might look like HTTP localhost 3000 posts 1. And so what we're saying is, oh, actually, we're not even going to get this. Sorry, this is from the host. So this is going to be the first part, slash posts. And this is going to be the second part. So we want the first index in there. So that's how we're going to get the ID. So now what we need to determine is if there is no ID, then what we can do is return what we were returning. So we're just going to return all posts. Else, what we can do is we're going to return posts, but we're going to find a specific one. So I'm going to say, all right, from that post, I want you to look at the post ID. And if it's equal to, let's go ahead and parse that as an integer, the ID that we just pulled from the path name, right? So that should give us everything we need. So now if we refresh this, we still get all of our blog posts, but if we get this one, we're going into post 4. Something didn't like that. Let's check it out. So again, I think this is a, hey, we didn't restart. Let's go ahead and restart this. I'm going to go back to the index, list all of them out, click on one. Oh, okay, so this is working. We just don't have a view for this. So we need to create a new page for this. Now, the way that we're going to do this is, again, nuxt.3 is setting up all these routes for us based on the kind of folder structure that we're creating here. So I'm going to create a new folder called posts, and in that folder I'm going to create a new template that will handle every one of those posts. And the way you do the dynamic kind of templates in nuxt.3 is with this bracket, and then by the attribute, so we're saying by the ID dot view. So this will be 1.view, 2.view, 3.view, etc. And then this template we'll take a look at. Again, I'll kind of put some markup in here so we don't have to watch me type that out, but then we could talk through what we're getting. So again, we'll have a script set up, and what we're going to do is we need a single post, right? And to do that, we're going to say const post is equal to, again, we're going to await fetch. So now what we need to do though is we need to call the API/posts, and now we need an ID, right? So we need an ID here. So how can we get this ID? Well, again, it turns out if you go through the documentation, if you're in the API, you can get the route by something like route.params.id, but we're not in the server. So what we need to do is there are these helper functions, and one of them is called use route. Whoops, use route. There it is. And so this will give us the route information. And so from the route information, now we can go ahead and pull out the params.id. So this is saying, hey, I want you to go ahead and get the post from /API/posts and whatever the ID that was passed in here. So this is how we're using this dynamic kind of convention here. So now we have a post. We can say, hey, I want you to display the post title, the post body, and then a link that just goes back to index. Okay, so here we are in our list. Let's just go ahead and click on one, and there we go. So there's our title, there's our description, and our backlink, and then we can click on something else. So again, just a little bit more of a complete example of how you might use an API route, and a little bit more of just kind of being able to list out a bunch of data, being able to click through and view something else. All right, so I think that's where we'll kind of end it. Again, this was a little bit of a precursor for the next video that I'm going to create. I'm going to explore using the Notion API. So this is any API that you want to use, right? That you need to maybe authenticate with or pass some information to and get some data back. This was kind of the groundwork for that. We need to understand how to create different API routes, how to write these kind of handler functions, get access to the request and the response. Now that we have that foundation, we can do some really exciting things. And I'm a big fan of Notion. We'll talk more about it in the next video, but I'm able to like create something in Notion and then pull that into my application, which is going to be really cool. So I'm really excited about that one. If you're excited about that, let me know in the comments below. Also, if you found some value in this, it would really help me out if you go ahead and hit that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, so you don't miss another video. And I think that's where we'll leave it today. I can't wait to see you in the next video. And as always, friends, happy coding.